Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they don't want me to, that's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the Sig Sauer Studios. On the Patriot Mobile Platinum Microphone. Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. The Friday edition of Armed American Radio's Daily Defense begins right now. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom today and every day here in the Sig Sauer Studios, Monday through Friday, in front of this very powerful Platinum. And it's the Patriot Mobile mic. You know that. And here's the Patriot Mobile phone. You know that, too. You can have one. Here's another Patriot Mobile phone. Got all these Patriot Mobile phones here. You can do the same thing. Of course, it's all being brought to you by the great X Insurance. Welcome in. If you want to watch the program, you can watch us on X at AARMark. Please please follow us over there. You can follow us and watch us at facebook.com/Armed American Radio. We're live up on that platform for you right now. You can also comment in there, and please share those posts and subscribe over there, or follow us, however you do that over on Facebook. About 82,000 of you do that. We appreciate it very much. You can also watch us on YouTube at Armed American Radio, and you can catch us on Rumble at Armed American Radio as we now venture into social media that was not real friendly with us for a number of years because they didn't like what we talked about, but too bad we didn't go away and they lost. Anyway, they've been very friendly to us lately, so I have to hand them some accolades. So welcome in. Let's get started on a Friday to end your work week. Let's go to the phones. Paul Markle, student of the gun, returns to the broadcast today after, a couple-week hiatus, Paul, where you were out running around and training people about how to save their lives and safe with firearms and all that fun stuff. Let's talk a little bit about that, and welcome in, brother.
Yeah, I think, was it 2 weeks ago I jumped on for a half hour, or was it not? I can't remember.
It was a couple weeks ago, but it was 2 Fridays ago, but we had some phone issues over there, and you couldn't get back in because you was traveling, and that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, that wouldn't have happened if you had a Patriot mobile phone. I'm just saying. There's that. There's that. And I say that with confidence because it's true. So consider that. If you sign up over there, you get a free month by using the AAR promo code, Paul. Wink and a nod. There you go. Anyway,
that's what I heard.
Tell us how the trip went. Where'd you go? What'd you do? All that fun stuff.
Well, the trip went very well. We went to Texas first. We did a 3-day class in Texas. We call it the Team Tactics and Trauma Medical class, and it's pretty much self-explanatory from the title. It gives people the opportunity. You go into a shooting school. You're like, well, I went to shooting school and a pistol. I did a rifle shooting school. This kind of puts it all together.
Yeah.
Because you have to work around other humans. You have to communicate with other humans. You have to. You're around other people that have loaded guns, which is kind of an important skill to have.
Yeah.
Often when we go to a shooting school, whatever it happens to be, let's say your standard pistol school, there might be other people around you, but it's not really a group effort. It's you and your target and the guy behind you who's yelling and telling you what to do. And that's pretty much it. But in a team tactics program or a team tactics environment, you have to work with other people. You have to communicate with other people. You have to move. And, a lot of folks out there, they're like, well, these Antifas, these BLMs, these whatever, the leftist thug flavor of the day. Like, they better never come to our city or our neighborhood or whatever, because we're going to take care of it. It's like, okay, cool. That's a cool story. You have a gun. Check. But have you ever worked with any of your neighbors? Have you ever figured out a plan? Or are you guys just going to grab your guns and go stand in the street and hope everything works out?
No, let me stop you, because that's a great point, and I hadn't looked at it in really in that sense. But I have plans with my neighbors, et cetera. Now, many of us have trained together over the years, and I feel pretty comfortable with our plan here. But at the same time, most people haven't, right? And here's the thing, guys: those thugs Paul's referring to have. They rob people in teams. They steal cars in teams. They break into gun shops in teams. They work together doing, criminals criminaling, man. And when criminals criminal, right, they criminal in teams of other criminals while they're criminaling.
Oh, yeah.
That's just what they do. So that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it in that sense.
Yeah, they might be retarded gangbangers, but they have leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And if they show up in your neighborhood, they're going to actually have a plan. And so that, and they're going to show up with guns. That's another thing that we have to get through to people. It's like, they're like, well, and they stroke whatever. They stroke their 12 gauge, or they pat their AR, or they, and they're like, well, they better not show up here because I have my gun. I was like, cool story.
Yeah.
When they show up, they're going to have guns too. So what's the difference between you having guns and them having guns? The difference is training, and the difference is ability, and the difference is skill. And, if you've got neighbors who like guns and you like guns, you like talking about guns, that's cool. But that's just 3 or 4 guys who like guns. That's not and all of those guys, if something goes down, whether it's the North Carolina type situation or the fire situation where they're looting people's houses in California, whatever. People that just have guns and talk about guns, when the crap hits the fan, they all have different plans. They all have different things in their mind, how they think it's going to work out. So a team is not, a team is working toward one single goal, not 4 different goals. And that was our main focus. In addition to having these guys get together and perform traumatic, learn how to do traumatic medical first aid to each other, because quite frankly, in a bad situation, even if it's not bad, even if it's a perfect situation, if you're driving down the highway and somebody, rolls you over and you're in a ditch upside down and bright red blood is pumping out of you, the ambulance is on the way, but it could be 15, 20 minutes away. What are you going to do in the meantime?
All right. Hold on. Let's, I want to take this was not a gunshot incident, but the whole country is watching what happened just outside of Dallas a couple days ago with that, at the track meet with the high school kids. And it's a horrible story nonetheless. It did not involve a gun, but you had a track meet at a particular high school, and there were tents that were set up for each, opposing teams from different schools. And you had one kid who, in my estimation, was in tent. He knew he was in the wrong tent, and he did it to goad the other tracks, the other athletes. He knew he was in the wrong place. And one of the kids that was, supposed to be there, one of the track stars said, "Hey, you're in the wrong place. Get out." And I guess went to grab his backpack. The guy said, "Make me." And he went to pick up his backpack. And the kid who wasn't supposed to be there from the opposing school pulled a knife, stuck him in the chest, stabbed him in the heart. His twin brother saw him run out of the tent, clutching his chest, bleeding profusely from a wound to his heart. His brother didn't know it, grabbed him, tried to put pressure on it, and his brother died right in his arms. His twin brother, he died right in his arms. And this is one of those things where we're not going to go into that today, guys. It's really not something that we would talk about here. But I say this from the trauma aspect of it, Paul, okay? The kid didn't know he was stabbed in the heart. The kid knew he was stabbed. Whatever he didn't know. You've got to be prepared for something like that to the best of your abilities, right?
Yeah, and, probably nothing could have saved that kid in that particular instance.
But you have to try. You have to try. And in order to try, you have to know what to do, right, is the point.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it doesn't have to be a shooting. It doesn't even have to be an assault. I mean, every day people go to work in plants and factories and so on and so forth. And, now it's getting better. Thank the Lord. Some of us have been trying to, kick the ball down the field for quite a long time, and we're starting to get there. But I did a class in Ohio. It was kind of an abbreviated medical class at a church, at my mom's church. And some of the folks that showed up there, we were talking before the class began. They're like, well, yeah, in our medical training, this is what we know. And then never use a tourniquet, but if you do, you have to loosen it and, this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, there's still, when you have 30, 40, 50 years of bad information, it takes time to combat that.
Well, we're getting ready to take a break. Let's talk briefly about, just for fun, because I can't wait to talk to you about all the leftists going absolutely bonker gooberish today because of Donald Trump. But when you have 50 years of bad information, you know how long it's been. It's been 50 years of bad information. When AOC is up in double digits in a potential primary against Chuck Schumer, and the Democrats are screaming for a Jasmine Crockett AOC ticket in 2028, and in addition to that, Kamala Harris feels comfortable coming out believing all the nonsense from the left-wing media today, saying, I'm not here to told you I told you so, but I'm not going anywhere. Here's my suggestion. Good. Come back. We'll be right back with Paul Markel, student of the gun. 3 more segments on a Friday. Don't go away. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense is being brought to you by Patriot Mobile. Visit patriotmobile.com/AAR and use the AAR promo code to get free activation today. Welcome back to the show. Yeah, welcome back to the show indeed. Welcome back to the show indeed. Make sure to check out all of our fine partners at armedamericanradio.com. Some great partners over there. Potential new ones coming up here real soon. Don't forget barrelbuddy.com, barrelbuddy.com. Clean your guns the real way. Okay, pitch the patch. Those days are over. That's patented technology at Barrel Buddy. Makes it so easy. I clean mine on the range after I shoot. It takes about 2 seconds, literally 2 swipes, and my gun is clean. It goes back in my holster or it goes back in my range bag, depending on which guns I have with me. They got you covered for every caliber, your shotguns, your rifles, your handguns, whatever caliber it is. Make sure to check out barrelbuddy.com, and make sure to also check out budsgunshop.com. Budsgunshop.com, our exclusive online retailer. budsgunshop.com. They have everything you need, and you need everything they have. Paul Markel, student of gun, welcome back to 6 Hour Studios with me, brother.
All right. Where do we leave off?
Well, I got in the middle of it. I had to have some fun with the Democrats with the whole AOC, and right before we went on air, I saw a thing on the news. I don't even like using that word anymore. On the opinion shows masquerading as news about Kamala Harris saying that she's back. She's not going anywhere. They're all up in arms because of Donald Trump's tariff situation. But anyway, we were talking about the kid's wound and what you needed to know before we got a little bit sidetracked. So I want you to continue with some of that training. And you had already, I guess, talked about the team tactics training. So go for it. It's yours.
Yeah, that was the first thing we did in Tennessee. We have basically a combination traumatic medicine and team tactics, and the information is out there, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of U.S. servicemen paid the price in the first couple of years of GWOT, because when we started that conflict, we went into it with this old Cold War mentality. And very quickly, we realized that people were dying needlessly. Mm-hmm. And we did a shift. We did a big shift, and we started teaching individual soldiers, Marines, and so on and so forth. We started teaching them how to stopgap a life-threatening injury while they're waiting for the professionals to show up. And there's really, there's no reason why if an 18 or a 19-year-old kid can learn to do that, can learn to keep his buddy alive while they're waiting for the pros to show up, that every adult American can't as well. And there's always a trickle-down effect. We taught the military, and that was really good, and then it started trickling down to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing at least an effort by most law enforcement agencies to give their officers something, tourniquet training and so forth. And the way it usually rolls is, the next step is the American civilian, the American citizen. And I've been, we've talked about this at length, but I've been trying to promote this idea that you don't just have to just hold their hand and watch them bleed to death while you're waiting for the ambulance to show up. There are things that you can do and that you should do. Mm-hmm. And of all the training that we give, the most important training is actually the traumatic medical training. But ironically, it's the hardest. Those are the hardest classes to fill because people don't want to think about it.
It's not sexy.
They don't want to,
well, you're right. You're right. They don't want to think about it. They'll take the gun classes, right? Because you're shooting, you're moving, you're doing whatever it is you want to do. But when it comes to that, they think, I don't really need to know that. That's a level of self-denial, I think, where I don't really need to worry about that. You need to worry about that if you're on a gun range, period. You should have some type of medical kit in your range bag. I do.
Absolutely. I've treated people on ranges. I've actually performed, I had to stopgap a bleeding injury to somebody else, a stranger that I didn't even know. But the same people that carry guns and, if you were a liberal and you were to say to them, well, why do you think you need to carry a gun? We have police officers. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, a police officer can't be there all the time. And you're like, okay, you're right. And you tell that person, you should actually take the training and carry the gear to stopgap a life-threatening, injury. And they're like, well, that's not my job. That's why we have fire and paramedics and stuff. I'm like, dude, you just told me you carry a gun. Because
they're 10 minutes away at best. Maybe if you're lucky, 5 or 6, depending on where you're at.
Yeah. But if you've got an open artery in a leg or an arm,
you
and
have seconds to act.
If they show up in 6 minutes and nothing has been done, you're dead.
Yeah.
You're not going to be living. And even if you're still alive, technically, if you get to the point of irreversible shock, your organs start dying. And you deny those things oxygenated blood, they're not coming back.
Well, let's talk briefly about what can happen on a range, okay? Obviously, you police the range, okay? But you're dealing, what's an average class size for you?
Anywhere from 10 to 15.
Okay. Well,
is an average handgun class.
Okay, and they're holstering and unholstering and reholstering, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Live fire on the range. A myriad of things can go wrong, particularly at certain times of the year if you're wearing an outer jacket or something like that. Okay. Have you ever seen a negligent or accidental discharge on a range while you were teaching?
You're trying to get me to curse myself, but I haven't had one during my class. I've seen them. No, that's not true. I've had them where no one got injured.
Right.
We've had negligent discharge, but I've been on ranges where people have gotten injured, and like I said, fortunately, I was actually at a national shooting match several years ago where there was a negligent discharge that someone got shot. Mm-hmm. And I was the first responder to put direct pressure on the bullet hole. And nobody there had a trauma kit or anything. And, unfortunately it wasn't life-threatening. It was just venous bleeding. But I held pressure on the wound for like 10 minutes or maybe more, until the ambulance showed up. Was it
a self-inflicted wound? I'm curious.
It was. Okay. It was a self-inflicted wound.
That usually happens on a reholster or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you get these folks out there that are they're worried about time.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried about going fast, and they either go fast. They go fast out of the holster, and then sometimes they try and go fast back to the holster.
Yeah.
Which you should never do.
Right.
But regardless. The fact of the matter is it's really, if you're a person that has either a concealed carry permit, or let's say you don't, you live in free America where you don't need a government permission slip, but you're carrying a gun every day. If you've never taken traumatic medical training and you don't have the gear, you're really acting in a negligent fashion.
Yeah, let's talk real quick about self-defense shooting, Paul. Let's talk about a self-defense shooting. Let me set this up. We've got 30 seconds. When we come back, I'll get your response. But ladies and gentlemen, let's just assume you're in a grocery store parking lot and someone attempts to rob you, and you are successful in stopping that robbery with your concealed carry firearm. You've shot somebody. They are on the ground, incapacitated. They are wounded right now. What's your moral obligation? I want you to think about that during the break, and we come back. Does that moral obligation implore you to act to save that person's life, or are you just going to stand there yelling and screaming for someone to call 911 while you have your handgun on them? When we come back, let's talk about that. That's an interesting concept, but you have to know what to do in that situation, because that's the end result of a gunshot wound, ladies and gentlemen, is an injury, possibly mortal. We'll be back right after this with Paul. Don't go away.
All clear.
10-4.
Daniel Defense firearms are guaranteed for life, trusted worldwide, and designed, engineered, and manufactured right here in America. Daniel Defense, freedom, passion, precision.
Daniel Defense is, in fact, freedom, passion, and precision. Make sure to check them out at DanielDefense.com. And you can, in fact, also go over to the DoubleDFoundation.org and check them out. You can find all of our great partners at ArmedAmericanRadio.com. Don't forget, Patriots Relief, Patriots Relief. I turned somebody onto that today. Well, not today, but a while back. I spoke to the person who thanked me today for doing that. She had some shoulder pain. And it works, guys. This stuff works for me. I don't wake up in that pain anymore. I've been using that stuff religiously, and the pain's now gone. And I was just at the orthopedic the other day, getting some work done on my hand, a post-surgery follow-up. But good heavens, it works. Try it. PatriotsRelief.com. PatriotsRelief.com. You can use the AAR promo code over there and you get 40% off. So make sure to check that out. We'll talk more about the rest of our partners when we come back from the next break. Paul Markel, student of the gun. Welcome back to the Sig Sauer Studios, my brother. It's always fun to have you here. I kind of got sidetracked. What was I setting up for you? Because the guys are out cutting all kinds of grass and stuff around the studio right now. They hadn't been here in 3 months, and they choose airtime to show up. It's a riot. It never fails on a Friday, brother.
When it comes to what's your obligation?
Moral obligation. Thank you for the reminder.
People will say, well, I'm not going to take that training because I just shot the guy. I'm not going to go perform first aid on him. And I was like, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not training you to be medical man so you can fly around with a red cape and look for injured people.
Medical man in a red cape. I got the visual.
When we start our classes, we do a 2-day class called Beyond the Boo Boo. And I tell people, I'm like, look, close your eyes. Think about the people you see every day when you wake up. Think about the people. Look at the faces of the people who are in the car with you.
Yeah, right. Good point.
Those are the people. That's why you're here, because it's those people that you're going to be there when they get injured. People that ride in the car with you, the people that you see every day at home, at work. Those are the people that need you. Your children, your grandchildren, your spouse. Those are the people you're going to have to work on. Now, if you want to be kind and benevolent and generous, be the good Samaritan and help out a stranger, that's great.
Cops are obligated. Cops are obligated to do that. Okay, they're going to try to help somebody.
Police officers are obligated.
All right.
And even after they shoot someone, but only to the point where they don't put themselves in jeopardy. Yet no one can require you to put yourself into jeopardy or into danger in order to perform first aid. If that person is still squiggling around, if they still, got a gun or what have you, it's what we call method of injury. Right. How are they injured? Why are they injured? But all these things that we talk about, you're far more likely. We've been teaching the medical class since 2011, and I've had far more people contact us as a student of the Gun University and say, hey, I just wanted you to know that, this yesterday or this last week or whatever, that I had to use that training to help someone. We've had people literally, not figuratively, save lives. Our graduates have been credited with saving people's lives. The ER doctor said, if they wouldn't have done what they did, this person would be dead right now.
Yeah, and that moral obligation, let me go back to that for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, you're right, Paul. I think most people are good people, right? Even in a situation like that, when it's over, I don't know how I'm not sure how I guess it would depend on how the situation unfolded. I actually have talked to people who have been in that situation many times over the years that have helped, okay? And others who didn't, because what you just said, right? You don't want to put yourself back in harm's way. You don't know if this person has another weapon. Maybe they're faking it, right? Maybe they want you to get close to them. Who knows? I don't think you're under any legal obligation to do so, but there's a moral side to that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be entirely up to you. But I think, Paul, it's great to point out and necessary to point out that you cannot nor should you put yourself in any danger, particularly if you're there with your family. You have every right to step back and hold somebody at gunpoint until first responders get there after an incident like that. So that's up
everyone
to you.
has this, people have this illusion of their gunfight. You know, when people
Right.
start training, they own guns. If they train guns or carry guns, they have this self-generated illusion of how their gunfight is going to go down, and
it's so
never,
true.
ever, ever in their fantasy gunfight are they ever injured, or is an innocent person injured? But in reality, innocent people get injured all the time. You know, you can and do bleed. You can bleed. You can win your gunfight and still end up leaking,
And not even know it, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, I remember talking with Ernest Emerson, who is the ultimate badass blade warrior. You know who Ernie is. And Ernie
yeah.
will tell you, you know, he knows I hate knives, man. I'd much rather be shot than stabbed. Knives frighten me. But he'll be the first one to tell you when he has on this show. He says, you'll feel like you got punched in the chest 2 or 3 times. And before you know it, you're on your knees and you're bleeding out like crazy. Okay, that's how it goes down. Have you ever been in a fight, ladies and gentlemen, when you were a kid in school? You didn't even know you had a black eye. You didn't even know you got punched because you didn't feel it because of the adrenaline. So you do have to be prepared for that. That can happen. Now, Paul, I will tell you, in the incident that I had back in 2002, there was no way I was going to get out of the car. If I had to discharge my firearm, fortunately I did not. The mere presence of my firearm stopped 2 people, and that was good enough for me. But I can promise you, I was not getting out of that automobile if I had to fire from inside the vehicle. I wasn't going to get out and put myself in any harm's way. All right? And you're right, it is a fantasy. People they concoct all these ideas all the time about how badass they are in their own head, and it never goes down that way.
A recent story that everybody knows about because it was a good guy doing good things was the Eli Dicken incident in Indiana at the Greenwood Park Mall. He saved innumerable lives through his actions by putting down that deep state monster. But what people don't know is that after he did that, his girlfriend was responsible for saving one of the victims' lives by applying a tourniquet to them. The local authorities, you know, if you have to dig because nobody wants, that wasn't the super exciting, sexy story, you know, but the local authorities credited her with saving a life. So, you know, in addition to him stopping that monster, there were still innocent people bleeding. And there's one who's alive today because Eli's girlfriend jumped up and ran and put a tourniquet on that person and stopped them from bleeding to death while they were waiting for the ambulance to arrive. And I don't want to be that guy that rains on your parade, but here's the reality of the situation. If you ever find yourself in a place where there is a mass killer, where one of these, you know, rampage killers shows up, the good guys, the medical good guys, you know, the EMTs and the paramedics and stuff, they're not coming into the building until the sheriff or the police department gives them the all clear.
Yeah, that's right.
And what does that mean for the victims? That means they get to lay around on the floor bleeding for a long time.
Especially in Uvalde. You know, there's that.
Yeah. Parkland, Uvalde, you name it. Innocent people died because the people who were there didn't have either the tools or the ability to stop them from dying. And only the people, you know, we've ad nauseum, but if you find yourself in one of those situations, only the people who are present the moment it begins will have the opportunity to change the outcome. You know, the cops staging in the parking lot, the paramedics 2 blocks away, you know, they'll come in the building eventually.
30.
But it doesn't do you much good if you get shot through the leg or the arm or the torso or the guts or whatever, laying on the cold mall floor for 27 minutes bleeding.
No doubt. Let me stop you there because we're getting ready to take a break. And guys, I got to tell you this.
Yep.
You don't want to miss Monday's show. While I'm sitting here in the studio, a report pops up, a live report on Fox News. Declassified CIA file reveals aliens committed revenge massacre after UFO was shot down. That's on Fox News about 10 minutes ago. So Andy Hoosier's already been alerted. Look out on Monday's show. We'll be back right after this.
All
This segment of Armed American Radio's Daily Defense is being brought to you by Daniel Defense. Visit DanielDefense.com. Now, back to the show.
Oh, back to the show indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I just got off the phone with Andy Hoosier, he just can't wait to talk about that Fox News story that I just mentioned about that CIA declassified file. So make sure to tune in on Monday. You know Andy loves that stuff, and so do I. It's going to be a great conversation. Apparently they carry like really cool weaponry because according to this declassified file, whatever alien it was committed a revenge massacre after it was shot down. That's pretty wild stuff. So we'll talk about that with Andy Hoosier just because it's fun to do. Paul Markel, student of the gun, welcome back inside the Sig Sauer studios with me, guys. Don't forget, it's brought to you by X Insurance every day, and you can find all of our partners, including Crossbreed Holstered. North American Arms has some dynamite stuff over at North American Arms. In fact, if you're watching me on your screens, I'm holding up right now a 22 Magnum round because I cleaned my little 22, the Sidewinder that I carry on my hip every single day. And of course I unloaded it and I'm getting ready when I'm done to put that all back together. So make sure to check out North American Arms, NorthAmericanArms.com, and you can find all of our great partners, including Heaven's Harvest, HeavensHarvest.com. Make sure to check them out as well and get your emergency food supplies. Even if you don't want emergency food supplies, you think you have enough, you really don't. But they have those heat-in-the-bag deals. So if you're doing any camping or any fishing or anything, you're going to be out on the boat, you want some food, they've got it for you right there, and it's great food. We've all had it here at the ranch. So make sure to check them out. You can find them all at ArmedAmericanRadio.com. Paul Markel, student of the gun. Welcome back, my brother.
Yes, I am the worst. I'm the worst self-promoter in the world.
Yeah. I don't talk about my books, and I should, because I've got 3 great books out there, and I never talk about them. How many books you up to now? 5,500,000 or something?
I don't know. It's somewhere north of 40. But yeah, for those out there who are listening who are like, okay, I kind of believe you, but I'm not quite sure yet. That's cool. I wrote a whole book about it it's called Beyond the Boo Boo. It was going to be called Beyond the Band-Aid, but Johnson & Johnson didn't want to play with us.
Yeah,
so
that would make sense.
We couldn't put Band-Aid because they trademarked that. But so Beyond the Boo Boo basically describes my 15-year journey to convince people to save people's lives with traumatic medical training.
That's an uphill battle,
gear.
dude.
No, it was. I was a TCCC instructor for the United States military back in the early stages of GWAT. And, like I said, I'm teaching these 18, 19-year-old kids how to save their buddies' lives on a battlefield. And I was like, why aren't we teaching American adults to do this?
Yeah. Like we said, you find that they're probably your lightest attended classes, again, because there's the sex appeal thing about it. Again, there's that self-delusion that people are in denial. They don't think it's going to happen to them. But I will tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're like me, you have a fire extinguisher, and I have those fire blankets, right, that you throw over a fire on a gas stove or something like that. I have those. And choking has always freaked me out. That's a phobia of mine. I saved my son's life. I wrote about it in a chapter in my book in Lessons from Unarmed America. Being armed, Paul, is not necessarily only having a form of self-defense on you. It's also being armed with knowledge, and that's a critical component that we don't talk about enough. We have on the show many times over the years, but I know how to perform a Heimlich maneuver, and I remember when my son was about 5 years old. He had eaten one of those little peppermint candies that we've all eaten, little round ones, the red and white ones.
Yep.
After a meal, we were walking across the street in Myrtle Beach on vacation with my extended family. And I hear this lady scream, "Oh my God, that little boy's choking." And I turned around and looked, and it was my son in the middle of the street. And I immediately went to work. Heimlich maneuver, he coughed it up after a couple yanks. And it was afterwards I freaked out, right? Because I realized what happened, but I was able to go right to work. Ladies and gentlemen, you arm yourself with a firearm. Why aren't you armed with the knowledge? Do you know the Heimlich maneuver? Do you know how to put compression on a wound to stop bleeding? Do you have the materials there with you to place a tourniquet? Do you know how to do it, where to put it, so that you don't do more damage? This is life and death stuff. And that knowledge can literally change lives on the scene. If I didn't know what to do, and I often wondered, Paul, would people just have stood around if I wasn't there? And watched a little 5-year-old choke? I mean, you just don't know.
You don't even have to ask. I mean, look at the world in which we live.
There's people would film it.
Their first reaction is to pull out their phone and record it. You know, and while they're recording it, say something. They say someone needs to do something.
Yeah, as they're
Like,
standing
if you-
there filming it, you know.
Yeah, that someone is you. If you ever find yourself in a position where you're thinking someone should be doing something, that's you. You're the someone who should be doing something.
Yeah, and we live in a litigious society where people say they don't want to get involved. What if I harm somebody? They'll sit around. I mean, that's true. It's a very sad state. It's a
Let's go
testament.
back to close your eyes and think of the people you see every day when you wake up. You know, are you worried that your children, your grandchildren, your spouse is going to sue you? You know, people who are like, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to get sued. It's like, okay, cool.
I'd be
story,
worried
bro.
they'd sue me if I
So,
didn't act in a couple cases.
While you're willing to watch your grandchild bleed to death because you didn't want to take the class because you're afraid to get sued?
Well, even worse,
You're a mongoloid.
even worse, you don't know how to respond. Now you're in panic. Do you know CPR, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can perform CPR because you've seen it done before without even taking a class. You can figure that out, ladies and gentlemen. The question is, do you have the cojones to act in a split second when you have to make that decision when it is literally life and death?
And we don't do CPR on people who are leaking. You don't do CPR on people who are leaking because that just makes them die faster. If there's a patient that's leaking and you jump on their chest and start pushing up and down, you are going to make them die faster.
Yeah, well, I guess we're kind of talking about a heart attack situation or something like that here.
Right. So, you know, people...
Again, things you have to know.
Unfortunately, what people do is they're 100% of their first aid is the CPR class.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, well, cool. Then you become like the guy who owns a hammer and every problem becomes a nail.
Mm-hmm.
Not every injury is a CPR injury. But if that's all you have, I mean, there have been lots of good guys who have performed CPR on gunshot victims, which is the worst possible thing to do. But they do it because that's the only thing they know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to be a jerk about it, but let's face facts. If you perform CPR on a gunshot victim, they're going to die unless somebody peels you off of them. And there have been a lot of situations. They're like, well, they tried really hard to save him, but they couldn't save him.
Well, you know what else you hear a lot of, Paul? You hear a lot about don't move him. You know, he might have a broken neck. You don't want to move the person. There's a lot of nuance here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not pretending to be one on national radio. That's a fact, okay? But there are basic things that you can know how to do. Do you know the Heimlich maneuver? Do you have the tools necessary to save yourself in the event that there is a flash grease fire on your stove, right? Do you even know where your vacuum choking thing is? Do you know where your fire blanket is? It's not something you use all the time. It's a good time of year to go through that stuff and know those things and brush up on it. Paul, we're about done with the show today. I appreciate you being here. I know you've been really, really busy. Can you tell people where they can find you, please, real quick?
Yes. Go to SOTGU, Student of the Gun University, SOTGU. Browse around, sign up for class. We got a lot of classes coming up this summer.
All right.
And if you don't want to do that, buy the book. It's called Beyond the Boo Boo. It's on Amazon.
Paul Markel, Student of the Gun. Thanks for being here, brother. I appreciate it. Welcome home. Glad you made it home through your travels safe as you were traversing the Midwest and South and back up into the Northwest. Always great to have you here. Paul Markel, Student of the Gun, SOTGU.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to enjoy your weekend. I hope you got some good weather. I hope God pray for those people in the Midwest that are just getting pounded, please. And we'll see you on the Monster Cast on Sunday. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. We'll see you on Sunday.